Cyberpunk is a setting that I love, and VA11-Hall A, or Valhalla, revels in it. But why do I love it so much? What makes it so appealing? Well, because its geopolitical struggles, moral issues, and ambiguities are dangerously close to our own world. Cyberpunk has android escorts, mass revolts, darkened skies, totalitarian governments, rampant crime, pollution, drugs, and all sorts of problems. All of these issues are issues found in our world, but amplified to a fictional, yet slightly realistic degree. So, hearing this, you might be thinking, there's so many possibilities for a video game in that. You could be a rebel, fighting, attempting to overthrow the government. You could be a drug dealer, trying to scrape by. You can do what Deus Ex does and be a super sleuthing augmented agent solving government conspiracies. Valhalla does none of this. Valhalla has you as a bartender, just serving drinks and trying to make a living. Sounds lame, right? Well, it isn't. It's actually really smart. Really, I mean it. This game's really good. Valhalla is a visual novel where you play as Gill, a bartender. The bar you're working in is actually about to close down, and you're about to lose your job. You serve people drinks, you get them hammered, you listen to their stories, and you make some money. Simple, but it works for this setting. A good storytelling trick is to make a small-scale story in a large-scale world. So if your story takes place during World War II, make it about a kid looking for a doll. Why do you do this? Well, it's because a severe, brutal setting adds context and conflict to a relatable narrative. The tale of a commander stopping a world war is too grandiose and overcomplicated and will likely need a ridiculous amount of factors and plausibilities to get the story right. However, if you keep the main narrative concise, the setting becomes an enhancement to the story you attempt to tell. So Valhalla has a world that undergoes a lot of government corruption, but it isn't about that. You don't see a single government official in the bar even. It's about the people in the game. It's about their stories, what they represent, and how they expose the world to you. One of my favorite characters in the game is a girl called Streaming Chan. When I saw her, she was hilarious to me. A character who always streams her life 24/7, every single thing she does, and she even has a premium tax for people to pay to say lewd stuff. It sounds like Twitch streamers and daily vlogging channels, but emphasized. Similar to our world, but exaggerated. But when I thought about her more, and learned more about how she streams, it became more fascinating than funny. Then it became really sad. Streaming Chan augmented her own eyes to always broadcast her life to the world. Even her sleeping. She always has the stream chat displayed around her, so everybody can see what they say and where she goes. Streaming Chan also continuously makes outrageous claims that she'll take off more clothes if she gets more followers and viewers. Again, like our real world, but exaggerated. But that's scary because it's very close to our world, and it's very close to cam girls, and it can honestly happen in the foreseeable future if streaming sites don't have any regulations. But the best part about Streaming Chan, and pretty much every character in Valhalla, is that none of these ideas or concepts are shoved in your face, and that's because Valhalla has really good writing. See, despite Valhalla's clear anime influence, it doesn't come with the anime stereotype of long-winded exposition. A lot of bad anime tell their stories just using exposition, and they don't make use of every single word. Good writing makes every last word meaningful. Nothing is too drawn out, and brevity is king. Valhalla tells its entire story through dialogue, and doesn't have anything like, she applies her black lipstick, and black eyeshadow, and black pantyhose, and black corset that frames her perfect goth figure, and her black nail polish from IKEA, and there's none of that. It's all just meaningful conversations between humans, androids, or Lilim, as they're called in this universe, and it all works very well. But if reading isn't your thing, then this game really won't do much for you. The gameplay is just going through text and making drinks for people. Drink making isn't even very complicated, as you only have 5 ingredients and a set of recipes that never change. But there is a secret technique hiding under Valhalla, and this is a pretty big spoiler for anybody who hasn't played the game, as it's a secret but intentional mechanic, the more drunk people get, the more they reveal to you about themselves and the world. These can range from small little personal struggles about their purpose in life to massive rebellion secrets. It's crazy. Some characters in the game even ask for no alcohol, and the game makes it especially clear that the karmatrine has no effect on the taste, so you could easily sneak alcohol into people's drinks and they will be none the wiser. Why does this matter? Well, It affects what Gill learns, and it could even affect the ending of the game. So get the right people drunk, and your quest will change and be more interesting. Trust me. Alright, it's time to get serious with you guys. It's time for literary analysis section. Alcohol, and why it's in a cyberpunk setting. Alcohol and dingy bars are used in cyberpunk because they represent a form of escapism. You ever have a really long day, and you just want to go home and lay on bed and forget about the world? Sometimes you escape with a book, music, a YouTube video, a healthy alternative. Sometimes it's more dangerous. Sometimes it's alcohol. Copious amounts of addictive alcohol. And what we've described earlier with mass riots in China, a bank bombing in the city the game takes place in, and government corruption, can you blame people for becoming so reticent and wallowing in their issues? I mean, I certainly understand where characters are coming from when they need a place to relax, so alcohol becomes a central theme, and as a bartender, you're a controller of this addictive chemical. Do you instill it on people who don't desire it, or do you give in to people's hedonistic desires? Jill isn't exactly a very clean person either. She drinks a ridiculous amount of beer cans and has to buy meaningless, superficial products to fill her home and life. In fact, before every in-game day begins, you need to buy something so Jill can stay focused for the next day of work. She's unstable and on the edge of just completely giving up. She's 27, went to college, and is stuck in a bartending job she's going to lose. Couple that with equally depraved and damaged individuals coming into the bar and talking to her, alcohol becomes her escape too, her reliable form of running away. End of literary analysis section. The music deserves praise too. It's not incredibly standout, but its EDM and visual novel percussion, yeah, that's a real thing I made up. Trust me, you'll see it when I know it. Evokes a specific tone, a cyberpunk visual novel, kind of like the subtitle of the game. What's interesting is the player can change the music on the jukebox playlist to set the mood. This means that if you know what's going to happen in a day, or you just get lucky, the character you're talking to will get influenced by the music in the background. If they're feeling sad and talking about their issues, a sad song will come on and cause them to be sentimental. If a rough, grungy song is playing, they'll scream out their problems to the sun. It's pretty interesting. So with all of this praise, what could possibly be wrong with Valhalla? Well, there's a lot of reading. Now doesn't that sound like the dumbest complaint ever for a visual novel? Yes. Yes, it does sound like the dumbest complaint ever. However, I feel that I could only play Valhalla in short bursts and not get completely sucked into it for hours at a time. This is because there was so much reading and so much to internalize and analyze about the world that it's honestly overwhelming at points. There are a lot of characters and a lot of fluff dialogue that is really entertaining, and I really like it, but I think it was cumbersome. Some of the characters also kind of fell flat. Don't get me wrong, there's an amazing amount of really creative and really interesting people in Valhalla, but some are just lame. People like Virgilio and Art, who are just too much like regular people with generic backstories. I also didn't really like or get the talking Shiba characters. They were funny, but they didn't add much to the story other than comic relief. And I didn't even really enjoy the comic relief. They're dogs that talk for some reason, and they chase cats. They chase balls, and that's about it. They're in the game for way too long, and they don't really have a stake in the story. I also feel like there's a lot of ideas that were underexplored. For example, there's a character who's a brain in a jar named Taylor. Taylor claims that he is only one of the 5 in Glitch City that are brains in jars, and that they're capable of being sentient without a physical body. That's an incredible marvel of science. This character should be preserved and watched and maintained, but they're in a bar? Drinking beers and hitting on a hacker lady? What? Why? Can we discuss the fact that scientists discovered the ability to swap consciousness into a mechanical being and cleanly separate the brain from the body and keep the host mind intact? No? Oh, okay, let's just not discuss that. Alright, whatever, I guess. There's also too many characters. You can definitely tell the creator had favorites by making certain ones close to Jill, but some are just passerbys that don't have much of a story. They sometimes feel like filler content, and that with the idea of there being too much dialogue becomes a problem. Some characters are just like, the weather is poor, I'm a cyborg, beep boop, and then you never see them again. Worse is they show up in the later half of the game, the point where established characters should be returning, getting more development, and finishing their arcs. And you don't get enough of that closure, and that's sad. But all that negativity out of the way, my absolute favorite part of Valhalla, and my favorite part about a lot of the games, atmosphere. Lonely atmosphere. Jill is lonely. Really lonely. She lost the only girl she loved through a fight, and all she has is her cat. She doesn't really connect well enough with her co-workers, and she distances herself from a lot of them too. Look at this image of Jill standing in front of the convenience store. It's striking. She, alone, is facing a store full of products to fill in her lonely life. She struggles to connect with her customers, and it's actually very important that Jill's a bartender. She's a passive observer, a wallflower if you will. She soaks up information and uses that as fuel to discuss with her clients. Do you think a bartender would be very comforting if all they did was discuss their own personal life? Probably not. They talk about happenings in the world and ask about their clients. Gill almost never talks about herself, and that's really unhealthy. Other characters have a luxury because they relay their problems onto Gill, but Gill can't do that in return. It's unprofessional. She's taunted, trapped even. She has no voice of her own to relay, and in a society that views her as expendable trash, that's even more heartbreaking. Gill does show signs of anxiety and depression, but it's never explicitly stated if she has it. Gill is on the outside looking in, and with all this craziness around her, her guideless path in life, and her feeling of worthlessness, there's a cold atmosphere to Gill. She's not a brooding emo anime character, and that's impressive. Valhalla could have easily taken influence from anime tropes and cliches, but it chooses not to, and that's great. Despite these characters being pixel art, they're more human than characters in most video games. Gill is like everybody else in this universe, trying to stay alive in a dead-end job. Things like raids on her apartment are just casual mentions to her and many people at this point, and that's really tragic. And yet, despite all that sadness and despite all that grimacing, Valhalla isn't really a sob fest. It's quite funny. It can be very tragic, but it can also be very humorous. It can be political, it can be dramatic, it can be a lot of things because its story is so character-driven, and I love character-driven stories. I mean, Gill has no goal, really. You start the game just in a bartending job trying to make some money for your apartment, and it just eventually ends. But the journey along the way is so fascinating. Also, Dorothy is hilarious, I love her. This section contains spoilers for the ending of Valhalla and pretty much every major plot point. You have been warned. The endings of Valhalla are strange. Like, oddly rushed. For a game that was so deliberate with its pacing and its character build-up, the actual climax is kind of a letdown. So, halfway through Valhalla, you discover that there was a girl that Gill loved named Lenore. Lenore was extroverted. She pushed Gill to do her best in school and kept her sane during an incredibly tough schoolwork schedule. Gill even claims that Lenore made her last 2 years of university actually memorable, as opposed to the depressing slog it likely could have been. This culminated in Gill being offered a high-paying research job right after she graduated. Now, any university student would be thrilled about this. Their goals have finally provided them with a tangible reward, a fulfilling career. Lenore was thrilled too, pushing Gill to accept it wholeheartedly. But Gill was scared and turned it down. She said that she didn't want to be constrained to a job that she hated. Lenore said that was stupid, and all of her hard work finally gave her a reward, and she was furious that Gill was neglecting it. This ended with the two of them furiously arguing and Gill stomping out, never coming back. They never talked again, and it was never set in stone if they broke up for sure. It haunted Gill for the last 3 years, but, of course, history always comes back. Halfway through the game, Lenore's little sister, Gabby, comes to the bar, looking for Gill. She tells Gill that Lenore died, and came to tell her that it was all her fault. This leaves Gill heartbroken and makes her lash out at Gabby, telling her she never understood what she endured. They leave on the exact same poor terms that Gill and Lenore did. History repeats itself. So you hear this, and you're probably thinking, oh, she's gonna come around. They'll realize they need each other. The plot point is too major to just leave dangling and unfinished. And yeah, they do wrap it up, but way too fast. The final day of the game is built up to be the New Year's Eve party. Earlier in the game, the end of the first week and a Christmas party show a break in gameplay. The first weekend is a conversation with your in-game boss Dana, and the Christmas party is a game of Truth or Dare. Two nice mix-ups to the gameplay. Furthermore, there was a lead-up of a bunch of characters saying they'd be at the New Year's party. It was built up to be this massive finale, and it was just a conversation with Gabby. Not even that great of a conversation. It lasts only 5 minutes, and them making up is very rushed. It honestly goes, hey, sorry for being mad. Hey, me too, let's read a letter Lenore left because that isn't a cliche. Oh, okay, nice. And the letter just says, sorry. And that's it. That's the game. It makes them laugh, and they toast to Lenore in her memory. And then, really creepily, Gabby calls Gill her sister, implying that Lenore and Gill were married when it was never hinted at. And then the game just fades to white and credits start to roll? Yeah, that's it. And then one of the endings is Gabby doing Gill's hair. The ending was really rushed, and I felt it could have finished everybody's story much cleaner than it actually did. So, would I recommend Valhalla? Yeah, I'd say so. I enjoyed my time with it. The game doesn't do much other than tell a story, and that's fine. The player has some input on it, but that's better than most Telltale games, am I right, fellas? If you enjoy visual novels or the cyberpunk setting, then I'd say this game is for you. But if you don't like any of these, I don't know if this one's for you. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Please leave a like if you enjoyed, and if you really enjoyed this, please subscribe. I have more video game videos. That's dumb. I have more video game reviews, analyses, videos, just pretty much anything about games, movies, or books coming out. Thanks so much, and have a great day, everybody.